Outgoing Democratic Senator Joe Donnelly accidentally made the case for Bernie Sanders 2020. Now, this is the kind of video that truly excites me. When the politician doesn't realize what he said, when the anchor doesn't realize what he said, but I realize what he said, and I'm going to break it down. So I have 3 clips here to show you. All 3 clips are truly incredible. The last one is the most incredible. Make sure you stick around for the end of this video because it gets pretty funny. Now, first, let me show you. So this is Joe Donnelly on CNN with Dana Bash. And let me just show you the first clip here, which really is just Dana Bash asking a stupid question. Watch.
I want to ask you about your party, about the Democratic Party. You lost in Indiana in November. McCaskill, we just talked about, lost in Missouri. Heidi Heitkamp lost in North Dakota. The Democratic Party was already receding to the coasts, even more so now. So can the Democratic Party, your party, be viable without appealing to the interior of the country where you live and where you represent?
Okay, so before I even get to Joe Donnelly, let me expose how stupid the way Dana Bash framed this question is. So Dana Bash is asking Joe Donnelly, who just lost his race in Indiana, can the Democratic Party succeed without winning in the middle? But you're asking the guy, and you're sourcing, or you're mentioning all these people who lost their races in the middle of the country, like Claire McCaskill, like Heidi Heitkamp. These are people who are corporate Democrats. The question should be, all of you are taking on this centrist, moderate ideology, yet you keep losing. Shouldn't you consider a different direction? That should be the actual question to Joe Donnelly here and to these other senators, these other centrist corporate Democrats that lost their races. But that isn't the question. Instead, Dana Bash puts the onus on the party as a whole and is acting like the party as a whole made Joe Donnelly lose his race in Indiana. But no, Joe Donnelly lost his race in Indiana because of Joe Donnelly, because of what he did, because of the policies that he pushed. So you have to ask the senator or the former senator, why do you think you lost? And since all of these people, like Heidi Heitkamp, like Claire McCaskill, like others that ran on a centrist platform, since they all lost as Democrats, shouldn't they take on a different direction? Shouldn't you have taken on a different direction? But that isn't the question that Dana Bash asked. And that this is how mainstream press always frames these losses. If someone in the center of the country, a Democrat, loses the race, oh, it's the party as a whole. It's their fault. But if a progressive loses the race, oh, it's the progressive's fault. They do this all the time, and they don't even realize it. Now, let me get to the meat and potatoes here, starting with the first clip on Joe Donnelly.
So can the Democratic Party, your party, be viable without appealing to the interior of the country where you live and where you represent?
Boy, I don't know how you do that. I mean, I was fortunate enough. I got more votes in this midterm than any Democrat in Indiana in modern history. But it wasn't quite enough because the president came 3 times in about the last week, 6 times in about the last month and a half, and said, this is about him. And he said, if you don't vote, basically, you're betraying me. And we have not made enough of a connection. I work like a dog nonstop to make that connection, but that the people of my state understand that culturally, we want to make sure you succeed, that we're going to fight to make sure that, for instance, on student loans, we'll keep the interest rate at the same rate as a housing loan. But when you talk Medicare for all, like I heard on the panel earlier, you start losing the people in my state. When we start talking about, hey, we're going to work together with the insurance companies to lower premiums, that's what connects.
All right, some more ridiculous shit here. Now, I have a couple quotes to pull and just break down how wrong Joe Donnelly is. So this first quote, I got more votes in the midterm than any other Democrat in Indiana history. Voter turnout in the midterms set records everywhere. Voter turnout was up all across the country. Yet Joe Donnelly's acting like he's the one that earned this turnout. But he didn't. Turnout was up everywhere. Now, if turnout was just up in Indiana, then you can make a case that, oh yeah, I guess Joe Donnelly did bring out a lot of people. But that's not what happened. Again, turnout was up everywhere for Democrats and for Republicans. And this next quote here, when you start talking Medicare for all, you start losing people in my state. Oh, really? Who won Indiana in the 2016 Democratic primary again? Oh, yeah. Bernie Sanders pulls off shock victory over Hillary Clinton in Indiana. Despite trailing behind Hillary Clinton in polls, Sanders once again proved his appeal to disaffected Midwest voters by pulling off his 18th victory of 2016. And also, research on top of that, research backs up that Medicare for All is popular in states like Indiana. So this from New York Mag's Intelligencer. Both Medicare for All and single-payer healthcare enjoy majority support in recent polling from the Kaiser Family Foundation. Data for Progress, a progressive think tank, used demographic information from Kaiser's poll to estimate the level of support for Medicare for All in individual states. Its model suggests that in a 2014 turnout environment, which is to say one that assumes higher turnout for Republican constituencies, a majority of voters in Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania would all support a socialist takeover of health insurance industry, so long as you didn't put the idea to them in those terms. And that's exactly right. Again, I keep sourcing this other poll here as well, but I keep sourcing it because no one's talking about it in mainstream press. 52% of Republicans now support Medicare for All, and 70% of voters overall support Medicare for All. Yet, this stat is lost on both politicians and on mainstream press. Yet Dana Bash didn't push back on any of these points. She didn't mention how, wait, didn't Bernie Sanders win your state in 2016? Or wait, didn't you look at the polling on Medicare for All and see that even most Republicans support Medicare for All? No pushback at all, because once again, CNN, MSNBC, these corporate outlets never look at the actual polling on the policy because they support whatever a corporate-backed idea of healthcare is, which of course is a private insurance-based healthcare system. And also, just one last point here that I wrote in my notes. Trump on healthcare before the election was talking about how everyone will be covered. That was his healthcare plan. Everyone will have coverage. Now, he's not going to, Trump wasn't going to say, oh, I'm going to have socialist healthcare. But if you put it in the terms that everyone is covered on your healthcare system, people like that idea. And guess what? Trump won Indiana. Now, the last clip here where Joe Donnelly accidentally makes the case for Bernie Sanders 2020. And I'm going to show you that after this clip.
So who should win the primary?
Well, I'm not going to.
I mean, not a specific person, but a kind of person.
Yeah. A kind of person who can go into Michigan and go to the auto plant and have spent time there before and have talked to the workers there and have talked to the families at the churches and have talked to them about how important it is for their kid to get decent health care, and that decent health care is with lower premiums and coverage for all.
You know what's coming. So let me pull this quote here. So who would be the best Democratic nominee for 2020? Joe Donnelly responds, a kind of person who can go to Michigan and go to the auto plant and have spent time there before and have talked to the workers there. I wonder who that could be. Bernie Sanders to United Auto Workers crowd in Dearborn, Michigan, we need fair trade. Bernie Sanders tells cheering crowd in Dearborn, if we can rebuild villages in Iraq and Afghanistan, we can rebuild Flint. And this from Deadline Detroit. Bernie Sanders blasts GM for taking Trump tax breaks, then screwing workers. So Joe Donnelly, without even realizing it, was endorsing Bernie Sanders as the best choice for the Democrats in 2020. So that's just the first part of his answer. The next part of his answer is, quote, I have talked to the families at the churches and have talked to them about how important it is to get decent health care. Again, who could this possibly be? From the Detroit News, Conyers, Sanders Town Hall, rallies crowd. Quote, we need jobs, justice, and peace, Conyers, a Democrat from Detroit, said to applause at Fellowship Chapel Church on the city's west side. Quote, we need political justice and economic justice. Both men argued Tuesday that securing healthcare access for everyone enhances quality of life. Healthcare is a human right, Sanders told the crowd. If every other major country guarantees healthcare to every man, woman, and child in their nations, by God, we can do it in the United States. So, again, Bernie Sanders is the guy that corporate Democrat Joe Donnelly accidentally has endorsed for 2020. And this is the same mistake that also Claire McCaskill, who also lost her race, made when talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, how McCaskill was confused about the popularity of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Well, how about instead of being confused, you become curious and you actually look at, okay, why is AOC so popular? Why is Bernie Sanders so popular? And think, oh, Maybe I should look at their policies. Oh, look at this. Medicare for All is even polling 52% in popularity with Republicans and 70% with voters overall. Or look at free college tuition, or look at getting money out of politics. All of these issues that connect directly with voters that the majority of Americans agree with, but corporate Democrats like Joe Donnelly and Claire McCaskill ignore it because they are paid to ignore it. And then what happens? They lose, and for some reason, CNN puts them on to ask them for advice on what Democrats should do. Look, as a Canadian, I watch Canadian politics here in my country. When somebody loses, I don't see people on television bringing the loser on and asking them, how can your party win? No, you ask the person, if you bring them on at all, okay, what went wrong? What did you learn? What advice do you have based on what you learned, based on your loss? What advice do you have for other people? But instead, Dana Bash brings on Joe Donnelly like he has some real advice for Democrats on how to win when he just lost his race. So this clip, I truly love it because it shows the stupidity of the media. It shows the complete unawareness of someone like Joe Donnelly, not even realizing that he's accidentally endorsing Bernie Sanders for 2020. And it shows the real path forward, that even when they are not fully aware that they are doing it, they are endorsing and supporting somebody and recognizing that this is the way forward without realizing that the way forward is, in fact, a progressive vision. They are accidentally pushing a progressive vision for the Democratic Party. But thank God they are, because the rest of us, or people like me and you watching this, most likely recognize that this is the future of the U.S.